friends, welcome back to my channel. I hope that you're doing well. Welcome to another video and welcome back to another cozy wrap-up. It has been a long time since I have sat down to film a wrap-up video. I don't even know how to do this anymore. It's been way too long, but I decided in the new year that I wanted to bring these back. I love filming them. I love chatting about the books that I read in a month and being able to gush about the books I loved and to rant about the books that I hate. I'm very excited to get into it with you guys, but it's going to be a long one because I read quite a few books this month. So without further ado, grab a snack, grab a drink, and let's get into it. I'm going to start with my stats. It's my favorite part of every wrap-up. I love seeing a good, stats section, so let's get into it. In the month of January, I read a total of 20 books. I'm also going to scoot over so you can see the pictures. I read a whopping 6,823 pages, which averages out to about 220 pages a day and roughly about 341 pages per book. I listened to a total of 183 audiobook hours. I read 16 books via mixed media format, 3 audiobooks, and 1 ebook. Of those books, it was 18 novels and 2 novellas. My star ratings this month, I had 6 5 stars, 4 4.5 stars. I had 3 4 stars, 3 3.5 stars, and 3 3 stars. And then finally, I had 1 book that I did not rate because I DNF'd it. My average rating this month was a 4.18. The genres that I read this month, I had 9 romances, 6 fantasy books, 3 contemporary books, 1 paranormal book, and 1 science fiction. For my age range breakdown, I read 14 adult books, 3 YA books, and 3 middle grade books. Then we have some representation breakdown for my LGBTQI+ rep. I read 1 book where the main character was part of the community, 5 books where it was present in a side character, which means that 14 of the books that I read this month had no LGBTQI+ rep. Of that breakdown, I read 2 books with bisexuality rep, 1 book with gay rep, 1 book with lesbian rep, and 2 books that were non-specific. Then for my other representation breakdown, as in disability, illness, mental health, I read 7 books where it was present in a main character, 4 books where it was present in a side character, which means that 9 books that I read this month had no other representation. And for that breakdown again, I read 5 books with illness rep, 2 books with mental health rep, and 2 books with disability rep. For my POC breakdown, I read 10 books where the characters were POC, and 10 books without, and 5 books where the author was a person of color, and 15 without. Speaking of authors, I read 16 books written by women, 1 book written by a non-binary author, 1 book written by multiple authors, and 2 books written by men. I read 11 books that were part of a series this month, and 9 standalones. I started 5 series, read 4 sequels, and finished 4 series this month. All 20 of the books that I had this month I read for the very first time. 8 of them I owned and bought myself. 4 of them I got in book boxes. 3 I listened on Audible. 2 that I listened to through the library. 2 books that were gifted to me. And 1 book that I read on KU. Then we have my publication year breakdown. I read 8 books published in 2022, 4 books published in 2021, 1 book published in 2020, 1 book published in 2019, 1 book published in 2017, 1 book published in 2016, 2 books published in 2015, 1 book published in 2014, and 1 book published in 2011. And finally, for my color breakdowns, I read 6 blue books, 5 black books, 2 white books, 2 red books, 1 gray book, 1 pink book, 1 purple book, 1 green book, and finally, 1 yellow book. Okay, that is all of my stats for this month, so let's get into the actual books. The first book that I'm going to talk about is Hooked by Emily McIntyre. This is a book that I picked up and read for the group book for Married Bookmas. She was our group book and author, and I enjoyed this one. This one is a dark Peter Pan retelling where Wendy ends up with Hook. It is a contemporary story. There's no fantastical elements going on in here. It follows James, who wants to get revenge on Michael, who happens to be Wendy's father. His name is, his name is Peter Michaels. He goes about getting revenge by getting close to his daughter, but in the process of that, he ends up falling for Wendy in ways that he didn't even know he was capable of, and it's a story from there. I found this book to be a little bit one-dimensional. Unfortunately, it wasn't a book that I absolutely loved. I did really enjoy the retelling aspects of this and how there were little nods and hints to the original Peter Pan story that I found very engaging and fun to read. But other than that, the story itself was one-dimensional, the characters were one-dimensional, and I didn't absolutely fall in love with the actual book itself. I ended up giving this one a 3.5 stars. It wasn't bad by any means. I will say that I got an extra half star because I found the ending to be quite dramatic and fun to read. But other than that, the build up to the ending and the actual happily ever after that these characters got wasn't really something that I really overall enjoyed. I do plan on moving on with the series because they are all interconnected standalones, so I can definitely read the next one and possibly enjoy it even more, but this one was not a 100% success, unfortunately, but I'm happy that I read it. Alright, up next we're moving on to Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. I love Colleen Hoover, as you guys well know, and I'm very excited that I finally got around to reading this book because it has been on my TBR for a very long time. This one, I'm not going to remember their names. This one follows Tate and Miles. Tate is just coming back into town to live with her brother. I don't remember why she's living there, honestly. I think it's so that she can go to school and get her degree. And she ends up running into Miles, who is drunk on her apartment stoop the day that she gets in, and they have an instant connection. But at the beginning, Miles seems to really dislike Tate as a person and doesn't really want to be around her. But you find out that Miles has a really, really traumatic past and he doesn't want to fall in love. So they end up creating a friends with benefits situation, but the rules are that Tate can't ask about his past and don't expect a future. So it's the relationship between the two of them. Now, I gave this book 5 stars, but I feel like it's really important to talk about how toxic this relationship is. Neither character is really good for each other, and it takes a long time for the two of them to figure out how to be the best that they can to each other without expecting too much. That being said, the emotional aspects of this book really tied everything together for me and really compelled me to give it this full 5 stars. I ended up really enjoying the characters by the end, as well as their storyline, and the traumatic past that is brought up in regards to Miles's history is very sad. This definitely does have trigger warnings, so if you are triggered by anything, I will recommend that you look up the trigger warnings on this. I'm not going to explain what it is just because it is a very big spoiler for his past in general, but I feel like it's really necessary. If you are going to read this, just go and check the trigger warnings if you are triggered by certain things. So I did enjoy this book. I thought that it was very heartfelt, very moving, but again, toxic relationship. But as I read more and more dark romances, I find that I'm less critical of toxic relationships, which is very bad to say, especially because this is appealing to a very broad audience and not somebody necessarily that reads dark romances and is more accustomed to toxic relationships. So I don't feel like it's the best representation of a healthy relationship. However, that being said, I still really enjoyed it. And if my voice sounds funky, I'm so sorry, but my throat is killing me today, so I apologize. Up next, I read my first middle grade of the month, and that is Fenris and Mott by Greg Van Eekhout. I picked this one up because I was trying to clear off some space on my middle grade shelves with the intention of knowing that I probably wasn't going to keep these ones. I get a lot of books sent to me by Al Crate Jr. I'm very thankful for that, but I don't necessarily tend to gravitate towards middle grade books, so I just wanted to give myself another extra push to read them, but also to clear up some space on my shelves. Long-winded explanation to say that I read this and I enjoyed it. I ended up giving it a 3-star. Keep in mind, a 3-star is a very good rating. I'm not the target audience for this, so I don't think that I could have given it anything more than what I gave it, but I enjoyed it. This one follows Fenris and Mott. Mott is a young girl who stumbles upon a puppy in the dumpster behind her house, and she makes the puppy a promise that she's going to take care of him. However, Fenris is not a puppy, he's a wolf, and he is a descendant from the gods, and he is prophesied to bring about the end of the world and to bring about Ragnarok. He's supposed to eat the moon and bring about Ragnarok. So she goes on this journey to save Fenris while also trying to stop the destruction of the world that he is supposed to bring. It was cute, it was fun, it was fast-paced. I do recommend it if you are looking for a fun, cute middle grade. I just don't see myself ever rereading this one, but I liked the writing, I liked the characters, I thought Mott was really cute. Fenris was fun to follow his antics and the things that he got himself into. I don't really know much more to say about that one. I enjoyed it. Up next, I read the first book that I don't own, and that is The Words by Ashley Jade. This one was so fantastic. I love this book so much. It's a chunker, but it was so good. And this one, I'm not gonna remember their names, but this one follows a hero and heroine that met when they were in high school, and she was tutoring him for a while, and they struck up a really great friendship and then had a very short and quick relationship that ended quite abruptly and in tragedy for at least one of them. And then the hero goes on to become very famous and become a part of a band, and something happens to one of his bandmates. He is there to witness it, and he is really struggling after the aftermath of that. And so the heroine is brought in to become his sober companion to make sure that he gets to his dates and stuff on time and is there at his shows and is not drinking and is basically just staying out of the press. But the only rule is she's not allowed to sleep with him. That becomes quite hard for her to resist once she realizes that the chemistry that they had is still very much there, even though she hates his guts. So I really enjoyed this book. It was very fun. It was very angsty. It was very sexy, but it was also very emotional, very heartfelt, very deep. Again, lots of trigger warnings in this book, so make sure to check them if you need to, but I found it to be a very compelling book. It was 600 plus pages, and I didn't feel like it was overly long by any means. I really loved the exploration of these characters and their relationship together, but also apart. The relationships that were explored in here, not only romantically but emotionally as friends, was also really beautiful. There's also a brother-sister relationship in here that was amazing. There was a father-daughter relationship in here that was amazing. And I just felt that all of it was really well-rounded and well-written, and I'm very excited to read more from this author. There is another book that just came out in this series, so I'm excited to get around to that one. It follows two characters that we have met previously in this book series, and I'm excited to see where their story continues. So this was a 5 out of 5 stars easily for me, and I highly, highly recommend it. Then I'm moving on to my first Sophie Lark of the month, and that is There Are No Saints. And this is a very interesting book. This is a serial killer romance. You follow the hero, if you want to call him that. He is a serial killer, and the heroine gets basically dropped at his feet as a prize, we should say, by another rival serial killer. They know each other, they know what each other does, and as a way to rile up, what's his name? I don't even know. Cole, as a way to rile Cole up, she is dropped at his doorstep, half dead. And it's a relationship between Cole and this woman, even though from the beginning she doesn't really know what's going on or kind of where she fits into this whole grand scheme of things. It's very interesting because as a reader, you are getting both perspectives, so you kind of know the nefarious doings that Cole does in his own personal time, while as the main character, Mara, is very oblivious to this information, but she has a dangerous pull to Cole and is unable to step away, and it's a relationship between the two of them. This book does leave off on a cliffhanger, which I was not expecting, but I'm very, very curious to see where the second book goes because I was definitely captivated by these two characters. Even though you want to hate Cole so much for what he does, it's honestly like so well written that you want to root for him, even though you know he's a terrible main character. So yeah, I find that this one was just very engaging and very captivating in regards to the main character's dynamics, but also just the writing and the plot and the way that this was overall put together was a very fun read. I had a great time with it. It was a quick read. I read it in a day, and because it's Sophie Lark, I was expecting it to be great, but I was definitely blown away by how well this was executed. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. There were some things that took me out of the story. Again, check your trigger warnings, but I really enjoyed this one. Then I read The Birde Test by Helen Huang, and this is definitely one that I was a bit disappointed by, unfortunately. That being said, I still give it a relatively good rating. It's a 3.5, just because I really enjoyed books 1 and 3 in the series. I was let down by book 2. But this one follows Esme, and she gets approached in her home country, Vietnam. She gets approached in Vietnam by the mother of the hero, and she's basically going to Vietnam to find him a bride because he is in his late 20s and he has not found somebody to settle down with, and she is determined to find him a bride. So she brings Esme back to the States to try to strike up a relationship with her son and get married to him. Esme does have a daughter that she does not talk about to these people, so you know that that's one of her issues going into this book. But also Kai just doesn't want a relationship. He doesn't want to fall in love. He has loved people in his past and has been really hurt by it, and he just doesn't want anything to do with that anymore. But he cannot deny his extreme connection that he has with Esme in both a physical and emotional sense. Even though she does things that drive him crazy, he can't help but want the best for her and continue to look out for her. And it's a relationship between the two of them. I think the things that really bothered me about this book was, first of all, how little the main character respected Kai's space and his need for understanding of his lifestyle and the way that he expects to live his life on a daily basis, and she just had no respect for like his personal space. She just kept doing things that she thought was going to be the best for him without actually asking him what was best for him. And I didn't like that. I also felt like Esme was just a very strange character all around. Kai definitely had his issues, don't get me wrong. He needed to learn really how to communicate what he needed. However, this book does, an entire series does, talk about autism and the ways that these characters maybe struggle to communicate with people that don't have autism. And so that's definitely something that is talked about quite heavily in this book in particular. And I enjoyed those conversations. I enjoyed some of this book to a certain degree, but I think that the inability to fall in love with Esme as a main character and the frustration that I had with Kai as a main character led to me not really loving this book. So I gave it a 3.5 stars. I liked it. I will definitely keep it to complete out my series, but it was not my favorite in the series by far. We are back to middle grade, and I picked up Willodeen by Catherine Applegate. This one definitely reads very, very young. I feel like this one reads more young than Fenris and Mott, which is interesting, but this one follows, I don't even know her name. Her name is Willodeen. Duh. And she loves the forest and creatures. Her family died in a fire when she was quite young, and now she lives with these two women. They are married, and she is convinced that these creatures that live in this town, they're like, they kind of remind me of anteaters, I guess. The creatures in this town are going missing and slowly but surely going extinct, and it's because they are being hunted by the people in this town. They aren't really thought of as animals to protect, and Willodeen goes on a journey to figure out why this is happening, but also there are something called hummingbears that are also going missing from this town, and the hummingbears bring in a lot of tourism for this town, and they're very important to the survival of this town, but they are dwindling in past years, and Willodeen and her friend that she makes in the story go on a journey to figure out all of that. I feel like this is a terrible synopsis of this book, but I just think that this book for me is pretty forgettable. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't bad. Again, I'm not the target audience. I feel like this would be perfect for middle grade readers, but it just wasn't a perfect book for me. 3 stars, not a bad rating, but definitely not one I'll keep on my shelves. Then I read my second Sophie Lark book of the month, and that is Heavy Crown, and this is the conclusion of the Brutal Birthright series by Sophie Lark, of course. And I really enjoyed this one, but it was not my favorite of the series by any means. This one follows the last brother to get his story, and that is Sebastian, and he ends up falling for a rival gang daughter, a mafioso daughter, if you will, and she is interesting. I don't remember her name, but when they meet, she is deceiving Sebastian in ways that he is not aware of. I don't want to spoil too much of this book because a lot of it does hinge on knowing a lot more of the dynamics of the rest of the series. But I will say the reason I didn't enjoy this one as much as some of the rest of the books in the series was because I felt like the characters were so wrapped up in their own relationship that they couldn't see how they were being deceived. And that really cost them as people, but also their families. And I feel like that's just not exciting to read about. Reading characters that are making dumb decisions because they can't see past their own rose-tinted glasses. And I found that the main female character was just annoying all around. I just didn't quite care for her. But I will say that the action and the dynamics between all the other characters in this series really brought the book to life. So I did give it a 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't not enjoy it. I just feel like the 2 main characters weren't my favorite, but I loved seeing this world and the continuation of these characters, and a lot of the characters that we've already seen in previous books were very prevalent in the story. And I liked that about it. So I didn't dislike it. I think I'm saying a lot of negatives about the characters. I did find the relationship to be satisfying by the end, but I just didn't love the build up to it. So 4 out of 5 stars, not a bad rating at all. It's a fantastic rating. There were some things I really didn't enjoy. So there's that. Then I continued on with the Twisted series by Anna Huang, and this is Twisted Hate. This is a hate to love, friends with benefits situation that I really, really enjoyed. This one follows Jules, who is one of the friend groups that this series follows, and then Josh, who is the brother to the main love interests in the first book. So I forget what her name is. I don't remember at all. But the first book, Twisted Love, it's the heroine's brother. And Josh is a doctor. And Jules is, she's getting ready to be an attorney. She's about to study for the bar. And she ends up having a very close proximity relationship with Josh because she ends up working in the clinic that he volunteers at. And they hate each other. They're constantly throwing barbs at each other and bickering, and they just don't like each other. They never have. Everything about each other really pisses them off. But as we know, there is a very thin line between hate and love, and in this book, you definitely see those lines get blurred quite a bit. They end up having some hate sex towards the middle of the book, which then leads to a friends with benefits situation. I don't feel like that's a spoiler. I feel like the tropes of this book are very heavily talked about, so if you're looking for whichever book you want to start with in the series, if that's what you're looking for, this is definitely a good book for that. But I definitely loved just the relationship between the two of them, how well it was explored, and the time that it took for these characters to realize that they didn't hate each other at all, that they loved each other in ways that they weren't expecting, and how much they cared for each other was really just so beautiful. And I just loved watching these characters become what they became. And I really adore Anna Huang's writing. I didn't love the first book in this series as much, but books 2 and 3 have been absolutely amazing, and I've only heard the best things about book 4. So I'm very excited to read that one, but overall, I really, really love this book. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It was just so fun, so sexy. Josh is definitely one of my new book boyfriends. He's just so hot. He's very, very well-versed in the bedroom, if you know what I mean, and I just had a great time with this book. Highly recommend it. If you are looking to start the series and you want to get something good, I would definitely say start with book 2 or 3 and come back to book 1. That way you're not turned off by the series, but this is just so fantastic and I highly recommend it. Alright, then I read another chunky book, and that is Jade City by Fonda Lee. I cannot believe I finally read this book because it has been on my shelves for quite some time, but Karina was looking to reread this book and she asked me if I wanted to read it with her, and I said, you know what? Yes, I do. So I did read it. This one, I feel like everyone talks about it, and I'm going to do a terrible job at explaining what the synopsis of this book is, but I'm going to try. It follows 2 rival gangs who primarily distribute the use of jade, which is a stone that gives you enhanced abilities, but it's also kind of like a drug. People that aren't raised to handle jade can have very, very bad withdrawals that leads to sickness and death. And it is a war between the 2 clans vying for control over this territory of land that they both kind of run. That's all I'm going to say because that's really all that I can properly synopsize for you. But I enjoyed this one. I gave it a 4-star. It was very fun. It was very intriguing. It's definitely a slower read. It's definitely very heavy on the politics and court politics and just these characters that all have relations to each other but are living very different experiences in the world they live in. So you're following like 4 major characters, and they're all dealing with the repercussions of this war in very different ways and seeing the world very differently as well. So I really enjoyed the exploration of these characters as well as the world building and the political intrigue in this book. But I didn't give it a full 5 stars just because political plots aren't really my favorite things to read about. They are very slow in that regard. And so I wish that it was just a little bit more fast paced. Also, there was a lot of characters, a lot of things to remember, a lot of ambiguity around what was going to happen that just really took me a long time to get into. But once I was into it, I had a great time. I am pretty new to adult fantasy, so it's taking me a little time just to adjust to what I should be expecting from books like this. But I enjoyed it, and I am already reading book 2, so I'm very excited to continue on with the series, and hopefully I love it as much as I've loved book 1. Now we're moving on to my first 5-star YA fantasy in a long time, and that is The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew. This book was so crazy. Like, I loved it so much. I'm not gonna remember the characters' names, but I did really enjoy it. And this one follows Delaney, who is deaf and has always had a strange relationship to the dark. She kind of sees shadows in the corner of her periphery vision, and she is always been a little bit afraid of the dark. She sleeps with the lights on, and she's always afraid of what's going to come out once the lights are off. And then you follow a boy named Colton who died, and when he came back to life, he was faced with Delaney. And then now she's going to this school that's known for being able to train people to step through realms and into different worlds, parallel worlds to our own. And when she's there, she meets Colton, but Colton's only rule is to stay away from Delaney. It is a dark academia book with fantasy aspects that I just found so compelling. You have this very eerie, creepy vibe going on in the book with very unexplained situations happening that the characters have to go on a very dangerous journey to figure out. These characters definitely have a very instant connection, but also a connection that is very dangerous for the both of them that I just found so intriguing. The magical aspects of this were like so ambitious but done so well, and I just had a great time with it. It is very atmospheric. It's definitely very vibey, but it has a great plot and great characters to go along with the atmospheric vibes of this book. I find that sometimes when I read dark academia, it's like they really lean on the atmosphere of the book and less on the characters and the plot, but this one did all three very, very well, and I just had a great time with it. So if you're looking for a good YA fantasy with some disability representation, but also just a really compelling story, I highly recommend this one. Then I read Maybe in Another Life by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This one follows Hannah, who is coming back to her hometown, Los Angeles, to live with her best friend while she gets back on her feet and figures out what she wants to do. She's been bouncing from city to city, job to job, really hasn't had any roots in her life, and she's finally ready to settle down. But this book is very unique, and you get to watch Hannah make two different decisions and how her life veers off from those two different decisions. So you're watching two different lifespans of Hannah's experience, but based off of the decision that she makes one night. She goes out with her friends and she meets up with her ex-boyfriend, her high school fling, and in one timeline she goes home with Ethan, and in another timeline she decides not to go home with Ethan and pursue something different. And I just loved the exploration of these two different timelines and how very little decisions that you make in your life can really exponentially change where you end up. But I also really loved the similarities that you see between these two timelines, and how even though she made drastically different decisions, how very similar her life could end up if she were to make the decision that she made. There are two different love interests in this book, and I definitely found that I preferred one timeline over the other, which is why I didn't give it a full 5 stars. I ended up rating this one a 4.5. I thought that it was really well done and beautifully written. The friendship character in this book was absolutely so wonderful. I just loved the friendship between Hannah and her best friend, can't remember what her name is, Gabby, and the support that they had for each other was just so beautiful to watch. But other than that, just like the compelling timelines that were in here, I think that it's hard to write one timeline that's compelling, but to write two that are extremely compelling and that you want to continue to devour is just so amazing. TJR, she's great for what she does, and I'm not surprised that I love this one, but I am very happy that I read it. This one was gifted to me by Clint, so thank you, Clint. Really loved it. So glad that I read it. I'm excited to read more of Taylor Jenkins Reid backlist. Then we have Gallant by V.E. Schwab. I did read this one, and unfortunately I didn't love it. I feel like this is definitely one of her books that is either you love it or you don't, and I feel like I fell right in the middle. I don't hate this book by any means, but it was all vibes, no plot, no characters. This one follows Olivia. Am I right about that? Yeah. Olivia, who is an orphan, and she gets a note from her family saying that she needs to return to Gallant House. And it's a note from her uncle, but when she gets there, she realizes that her uncle has been dead a year, and there's no way that he could have sent these notes. However, she's drawn to this house and to this mysterious wall that borders the Gallant house that leads to another side of Gallant. That being said, the idea of this book was awesome. I feel like the execution wasn't as well done. She very heavily leaned on the atmosphere of this book and less on the characters. The side characters and the main character felt very one-dimensional, and the plot itself was not as exciting or intriguing as you would think for a V.E. Schwab book, but the vibes were there. It was a very atmospheric book, but everything else just kind of fell flat. So 3 stars for me. I liked it, but I didn't love it. Then we have Black Brother by Jewel Parker Rhodes. This is a middle grade that follows a boy named Darius who's in middle school. At the beginning of the book, he gets called to the principal's office for something that he did not do, and through an altercation between the principal and him, he ends up getting arrested, and he is very heavily bullied based on the color of his skin. He also has a brother who is white passing, and he's very popular and everyone loves him, but nobody seems to like Darius. And it is a book that follows standing up to bullies, but also very much about racism and the injustices that Black individuals face and how much they are not backed and understood by the community, but also just a really cool story about fencing. Darius wants to beat his bully, and his bully happens to be a #1 fencer, so he ends up going to an Olympic fencer who is now retired to train him to do what he's good at and eventually stand up to his bully by beating him in fencing. I didn't give this one a full 5 stars because I didn't absolutely fall in love with the fencing aspect of this book, but I think the conversations that were had in here are very, very important. It's perfect for a middle grade audience. I think that it's written in a way that's accessible and understandable for younger readers, but also just a good book overall. So enjoyed this one, 4.5 out of 5 stars. Will definitely recommend it, but won't be keeping it on my shelves. Then we have a bunch of books that I don't own, so I'm going to try to get through these ones quickly. The first one that we have is Where the Drowned Girls Go by Shauna Maguire. This is the 7th book in the Wayward Children series. I enjoyed this one. I feel like every book, my experience has been a little bit different. I think that the exploration of Cora's life and her story has been hinted at for a while, and I'm glad that we finally got her book. This one does follow Cora. We met her in several installments of this series already. This one does happen in the real world, where she is really reeling and trying to recover from experiences that she's had in other people's doors, and she makes a decision that she doesn't want to live with this trauma, so she decides to go to a different school to unlearn the life that she knows. I'm not going to go too much into it. I feel like you should definitely read the other books in the series to better understand Cora's story, but I did really enjoy the exploration of this character. I always love the conversations that Shauna Maguire incorporates into her stories, especially being short novellas. The conversations that she can have are always impactful, and I really enjoy them. That being said, I didn't love this book as much as some of the other books in the series, but I liked it more than some of the other books in the series, for sure. I liked the ending. Like I said, I really enjoyed the characters, and I'm excited to see what happens next in the series. So hopefully I can read book 8 relatively soon. Then I read a short little novella, but boy was it impactful, and I read And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. Oh my gosh, this book is so sad. This one follows a man who you're living in his head as he understands and explores his relationship with his grandson and his son, but he is suffering from dementia, and you are slowly watching him as he loses his memories. I should say slowly, but it's a quick book. It was only like 90 pages. It's a novella, but he's coming to terms with the fact that he is losing his memories, and he's also grieving the death of his wife and the death of these memories that he has, but also the death of the relationships that he has with his family, because he can no longer remember who he is or where he's meant to be or his purpose in life. And it's very, very sad. It's very much one of those books that tugs at your heartstrings, and to do that in a novella is absolutely unfounded. I loved it. It was very sad. I bawled my eyes out. I highly recommend it if you can handle the subject matter, but it was really good. Then the book that I DNF'd was Vibe by Liza James. This is a female-female romance. I didn't really get too much into it. It follows a cult that was heavily reliant on molestation, and I just wasn't vibing with it. I also didn't really care for the writing style. I wish that I could have liked it, because I really do want to read more smutty female-female romances, but I just didn't like this one, so I DNF'd it. And the last one that I don't own is Lover Unleashed by J.R. Ward. This is the 9th book in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series. I have been reading this series for forever, and I'm very excited that I was able to continue on, because there's the book that I'm looking forward to is the next one. So this one follows Pain and Manny. Manny is a human doctor. Pain is a vampire. I won't explain how Pain is related to the Black Dagger Brotherhood, because I feel like it's a bit of a spoiler and something that you don't learn till much later. But in the 7th book in the series, or the 8th book in the series, I'm sorry, Pain is very heavily injured, and Manny is brought in to help heal her and fix her, and this relationship between the two of them. I liked this one. I really enjoyed the development between Pain and Manny, but as the series continues, you also get more excerpts and perspectives from past relationships that we have seen in past books, and that has been very interesting as well. This book was a little bit less plot heavy, however, it still did have a violent conflict at the end that was just wrapped up a little bit too easily, but overall I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm very excited to continue on with the series. My last 2 books, holy moly, I read so many books and there's so many to talk about. So the second to last book that I read was Gemina by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. This is the second book in the Illuminae files, and I really enjoyed this one. This was a wild ride for me because I went from this close to DNFing it to giving it 5 stars. How did that happen? I don't know. But this is told in mixed media about a spaceship that gets taken over by mercenaries, and you're following these 2 main characters, Hannah, who is the daughter of the captain of the ship, and then what's his name? Nick? Yes, Nick, and he is Hannah's drug dealer. He's had kind of a crush on Hannah for a while. They have really hectic and cute banter, but Hannah ends up being on the run for her life alongside Nick, and they try to save the people on the ship as well as themselves from the mercenaries. It's very action-packed. It's very interesting. The mixed media format of this book series is always just really exciting to read and experience because it's definitely different than anything that I have ever read before. But by the time we got to the end and things were being found out and things are happening, I was like, what the hell? I loved it. My jaw dropped at the end. I think the thing that I love about this the most is it's told in this mixed media aspect, but it's as if you're in the future investigating the past. So it's like the government is investigating this. So you're hearing like, this is a transcript from this. Be sure to pay attention to this. And I want you to notice this. So it's like being told as an investigation and not actually in real time. So very, very fun. Loved it a lot. Cannot wait for the 3rd book. Hopefully I love it as much as book 1 and book 2. And the last and final book that we're going to talk about was a little bit of a disappointment this month, and that is American Royalty by Tracy Livesay. I never know how to say this last name. I'm so sorry. This one follows a rapper named Duchess, and she is excited for new and better things in her career. She's about to move on and do something different other than rapping, but something happens to her public image that is being threatened, and she needs something to help stabilize her image. Then you have, what's his name? I don't even know. Jameson. He is he's royalty for London, England. I don't fucking know. But his queen is throwing a charity event in honor of his grandfather, and Duchess is going to be performing there. And they end up having to stay in the same house, and it's close proximity between the 2 of them, but it's also kind of a dislike to like to love situation. I didn't love it. I felt like the characters were very flat. I didn't end up falling in love with them. I don't think the sex scenes were good. They were actually quite cringy. There was no real conversations to be had in this book in regards to the longevity of this relationship. Not all books have to have that, but I feel like this one is super important because of the power dynamic between the 2 of them. And I just overall didn't love how everything played out. I had a good time while I was reading it, but I got to the end and I was like, that was just meh. It was just meh. So I gave it 3 stars. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it. I definitely won't be keeping this on my shelves. I will give this author another try in the future though. Maybe the next book will be better, but this one wasn't it for me. All right, these are all the physical books that I read in the month of January, not including many ebooks and audiobooks that I read as well. Let me know if you read any of these books and what you thought of them. I would love to hear your thoughts. Let me know what you were able to complete in January and what your favorite book of the month was. I would love to talk to you down in the comments below. But that is the end of this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give it a big old thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave. And of course, leave any comments, questions, and suggestions in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. Baby, turn it down like a sweet and ready. Go slow, keep it nice and steady.